All right, I see you're moving up in the world, huh? Trading some Bitcoins and whatever else you're doing nowadays, a little dog coin, whatever the kids are into these days, right? Made a couple mil, and now you're looking for a ride that represents who you are, represents that you've made it in life. Well, enter the 2022 BMW X5. This particular model is the S-Drive, meaning it's rear-wheel drive, with the 3-liter inline-6 engine producing 335 horsepower and 330 pounds-feet of torque. And with that demonstration, it's very clear that you don't need a V8, okay? Most people buying this thing, this is gonna be more than enough power for you, especially for everyday street driving. One of the things that really makes this stand out is the fact that it is an inline-6 engine. But before we get into those driving aspects, let's cover the X5 for what it is, and let's talk about some of the exterior things as well. So, all right, for the 2022 model year, there's not really any changes made other than the fact that there's a new special edition. I think it's called the Vermilion Black Edition or whatever it's called. It's basically like a matte black X5 with red grille inserts in it. It looks pretty awesome, I'm not gonna lie, but I believe it costs like $85,000, so I don't really care for it. It's just too much money. We now have a slightly larger grille, which some people may or may not like. Honestly, this looks pretty good as a whole. This actually has a pretty modern, sleek appearance to it, and they haven't gone completely nuts with the grille. I think this still exhibits pretty high class, high status appearances without looking ridiculous. But you let me know in the comment section how you feel about the way that this vehicle looks. Let's now finally move into some of these driving aspects. When you drive this thing, you feel like you're in a pretty solid machine, and you are. This feels well built, it feels pretty premium in here. And another thing to note is that this ranks pretty high in terms of crash test safety. This is right up there with like the Volvo XC90. So that's a huge reason to look into the BMW X5 is for its crash structure and how well it keeps your family safe. But as I mentioned, this engine is way better than those turbo 4-cylinder things. I'm glad that BMW offers this as the base engine. Gets about 21 in the city, 26 on the highway, and that is with premium fuel, multi-link suspension front and rear. The only real con that I've noticed with this, driving it, is the steering. It's way too loose. I see what they're trying to do here. Before in the past with certain BMW products, I complained about just how stiff and synthetic some of them feel, like overweighted steering for no apparent reason. This has now kind of gone in the opposite direction. It's now way softer now, which I appreciate the ride quality. It is a very smooth riding car, even with these 20-inch wheels. You could get the base 19-inch wheels. We have here Bridgestone tires wrapped in 275 wide tires in all 4 corners. And these Bridgestone tires are very quiet. It's quiet, it's comfortable. There's not even a whole lot of wind noise with it. In fact, this is one of the quieter products in its category along with Audi. If you want a quiet Mercedes product, which I'll talk more about at the end of this drive, but if you're gonna order a GLE, definitely make sure to get it with the acoustic laminated glass package to reduce the amount of wind noise that you're gonna be experiencing with the Benz product. But this, as it sits, this is a pretty base-ish X5, okay? It's only got like 2 options on it, like the premium package and the parking assistance package. And this is the S-Drive. Obviously, if you're gonna be ordering this car, get it with the X-Drive. Do not buy an X5 without the all-wheel drive X-Drive system in it, because you're gonna get better resale value down the road, and also it just makes sense buying it, okay? It's an SUV product. And I think 0 to 60 is lower by like 0.1 second, okay? I think some people tested this thing at like 4.8 seconds with the X-Drive system. So again, plenty of power, plenty of thrust in this thing. I'll talk about the transmission in a little bit, but yeah, $65,000, that's with like 2 packages added to it. You don't need to spec this thing out like crazy, okay? Skip the executive package and all that other nonsense, which is like $3 grand. You don't need the gesture controls. You don't need the heads-up display. In fact, I have the heads-up display turned off here. So I would just get the X-Drive, and I would maybe get that parking assistance package, because you do get that nice crispy 360-degree parking camera. So I would maybe offer that, but otherwise you get things like blind spot monitoring, this panoramic sunroof. All these things are standard, as well as heated front 2 seats here. and also powered seats in the front as well. So you get all these things pretty much as standards. Just get the xDrive, get the parking assistance, and maybe get the $250 option where you get the manual sunshades. Like if you have kids in the back, that could be pretty helpful. But let's talk about a few other driving aspects here before we move on into the interior segment. I have this vehicle in the sport individual setting right now, but I'll actually put the transmission into sport as well in the manual mode. The transmission, this 8-speed ZF transmission, it is so good. You would not believe how good this thing shifts. Sure, when you drive it in the automatic mode, you feel the vehicle shifting down 2 gears, but outside of that little bit of lag in the automatic mode, when you drive it in the with the paddles in the manual mode, you do not feel any of that lag. This thing reacts like a PDK Porsche transmission, I kid you not. See, like, look at these downshifts. Look how crispy it is. You won't believe it. You really have to try it yourself. Now I get it. Most people who drive cars like this, they don't really drive it too crazy. I just wanted to demonstrate to you that is a pretty cool feature of this vehicle. It shifts so well. That's what I'm saying. This vehicle with the ZF and this engine, more than enough for most people. But I mentioned I was driving around in my sport individual mode, so I mentioned that the steering is really light with this car. When you put in the sport mode, it kind of helps, not by much, but whatever, I still leave it in that. And what I do is I put the engine in the Sport Plus setting, and I put the transmission in its comfort setting. So that's how I drive it. The reason why I do that is because if you leave the transmission in its Sport Plus setting, what it's gonna do is you're gonna be constantly cruising around at like 2,000 RPM, even 3,000 RPM when you're doing 45, 50 miles an hour. And that is just so excessive. Then it becomes brutally quick to respond in the automatic mode, and that's just really unnecessary. And your fuel economy suffers because of that. So leave the transmission in its comfort setting and leave everything else in Sport Plus, and I think you'll be pretty happy with that for the most part. It's relatively inexpensive for the class that it's in. I like the fact that BMWs are pretty affordable in terms of the way they lease out. Now, I get it, in today's marketplace, I don't even know what the lease prices look like anymore. I think most people are just ordering vehicles. You probably won't even get a chance to test drive some of these luxury car products. So you're probably relying on reviews like mine and other people's reviews to gauge how these vehicles stack up against each other, because you might not be test driving these cars. You're probably just placing an order for it, and just know that this is a well-rounded automobile. It's decent value. I like the fact that you don't have to go crazy with the options. You can get like a $65,000 or under X5, and you have yourself a great machine with plenty of standard safety features. My personal preference in this class would be the GLE 450. I spec'd one out. It was about $72,000, and the reason why I like that so much is because I thought the interior felt a little bit more special to me, like the way it was designed, not necessarily the solidity. One of the must-have options with the GLE is actually that laminated glass package. You have to get that. The highway stability in that felt really good, and in this vehicle, when I was driving it at like 90 plus miles an hour on a windy day, I can notice that this car is being swayed a little bit by the wind. Okay, it was a pretty windy day and I was going pretty quick out of the highway, but I just expected this to feel a little bit more solid out on the highway. I mean, a lot of people, they look at things like these BMWs, and the thing is though, these new BMW products, it's not like what it used to be like 20 years ago, okay, with like the E46 M3s or the E39 M5s. These are no longer like the ultimate driving machine, okay? These things are, they've really become a lot softer now, a lot more dead in the way that it feels. There's like no reaction from the steering. There's no real pleasure in driving this thing hard. You enjoy this as a comfy cruiser, if that makes sense. If you want something a little bit more dynamic, a little bit higher quality, look into the Porsche products. I'm assuming if you're shopping in this segment, you have money. A lot of people pay cash for these luxury cars. BMW is a good one to lease, but I've noticed a lot of people pay cash because they can. If you're bagged up with money like that, I get that this is like 20 G's cheaper than like a Macan, like a well-optioned Macan or a Cayenne, but those cars, the Porsche products are superior to these BMWs. Okay, there's a reason why there's a price such a price delta between the two. The leather quality is superior on a Porsche. Like the seats are going to be a little bit more comfortable, which I'll talk more about in the interior segment. But even the Porsches, you're not going to feel hot-blooded. You're not going to get like, tons of feedback or anything, but the dynamics are superior with the Porsche, and the GLE felt like a nice bank vault. Like, it just felt like an amazing car to drive. I just really appreciated the GLE, especially a 450 model with the inline six. You do have a mild hybrid system with a lot of these vehicles, like the GLE 450 and this X5 that you see here. But the mild hybrid, all it's doing is it's trying to give you more thrust up front when you floor from the line, try to reduce that lag. It doesn't really do that. It doesn't really do anything. I don't really notice a difference. There's still a little bit of lag when you initially get off the line, but it's really not a big deal. It doesn't really bother me. For the type of driving you're going to be doing, I think this is calibrated really well, pretty appropriate for what it is. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Let's go ahead and let's transition over into the interior segment now. All right, the interior of the BMW X5. Let's make this quick. One of the biggest highlights with this interior is going to be the solidity of it. This feels like a well-built machine. Granted, this is pretty much like a brand new car. Most BMWs of the 5 Series level and up, like this X5, the 5 Series sedan, etc., they all do feel pretty well built in here. It's tight. You feel safe and secure when you sit in this thing. So I think a lot of people are going to like that. The doors feel solid when you close them. These Sensatech seats, okay, they're a little bit on the firmer side, but they're not bad. They're very supportive. They have decent lumbar support. Again, this is a free option. You have plenty of different little color choices with the Sensatech seating, but you can upgrade the leather if you would like. This is going to be fine for most people. Like I mentioned, these are heated seats in the front, and that's standard. You have two 12.3-inch screens here. The gauge cluster is all digital, 12.3 inches. Very easy to use, looks amazing. Both the screens look amazing. Even on a sunny day, there's hardly any glare with it, so well done there. And this is the kind of latest iDrive system. It's not quite as easy to use as the previous generation iDrive systems. There's a lot of features, menus, and things that you have to kind of learn and get across. But to be honest, this is one of the better infotainment systems. I don't mind it, especially if you're coming from a previous generation BMW product. You're really going to appreciate this. I think you should get used to this pretty easily. And this is a touchscreen as well. It reacts quickly, whether you use a touchscreen or the knob down here. So however you decide to use it, it's a great infotainment system. You also have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I really enjoy that feature. You also have a wireless charging pad down here. Again, this is like a $65,000 X5. All right, it's not even loaded up to the brim or anything. That's what I'm saying. You don't need to spec this thing out like crazy. You can really save some money here, and that in turn could also save you some money on a lease if you're getting a lower MSRP vehicle. The HVAC is separated from the screen. You have a little mini screen in the middle here, but again, it's easy to use. You actually have physical buttons here, physical buttons for your heated seats. There's no cooled seats with this car, if that's important to you. One touch up and down windows for all 4 windows. You have two-way memory seats in the front. You have automatic headlights. The paddle shifters, it's kind of like this silver finished paddle. It's still kind of plastic, but it's amazing to use. I love shifting manually with this X5. The transmission is unbelievable. Reacts like a PDK, essentially. Mercedes and Audi cannot keep up with this level of transmission performance, so there you go. The steering wheel is pretty girthy, feels nice to grip onto there, but again, it's a pretty lifeless steering wheel. Pushing this thing, driving it hard, that's not where the satisfaction comes from. Enjoy this as a cruiser. Plenty of space in here, storage, things like that. 2 cup holders in the middle, extra storage next to the phone charger. You have plenty of space in the door pockets for very large water bottles, so that's not an issue. Lots of space in the center armrest as well with USB-C connectivity. The glove box, even with the manuals and things, plenty of space in there. Panoramic sunroof as standard, as I already mentioned. The rear seats, it works. It's a usable rear seat, obviously. I'm 5'11". Getting in and out of this vehicle is very easy. I like that. but the rear legroom, especially if you have a taller individual in the front, it's really pretty limited back there. And the fact that there's like this hard plastic material behind the front seats means that if you're sitting back there, your shin is kind of digging into that plastic, and that's a little painful. So I'm not a huge fan of that. You do kind of have like this mood lighting going across the interior. I guess that's pretty cool. A lot of people are gonna like that. But yeah, the rear occupancy space, it's not like unbelievable, but the headroom is great in the front and the rear, like you would expect in an SUV. You do have your own HVAC back there, and you can fold down those rear seats, which is great. But before I talk about the trunk, I'll talk about this audio system. So a lot of people are probably worried, like, well, the audio system in here is like a bass system. How does it sound? It sounds great, actually. The clarity is there. The bass is there. I think most normal people, as long as you're not like a crazy audiophile, I think most people are really going to appreciate this audio system. It's a pretty well balanced, well tuned system in here. Anyway, let's talk about the trunk. So the trunk is a split opening trunk, similar to like a Range Rover. I think a lot of people like that, and the trunk space is absolutely massive, especially when you fold down the rear seats. Even without it, honestly, there's so much space back there. When you fold down the seats, it's just immense. So I think from a practicality standpoint, the little cubby spaces, the massive trunk, it's just amazing. And the fact that there's no rear spare tire back there, an extra storage bin underneath where the trunk area is, so you can use that as well. And the new kind of BMW key looks amazing. I really like that. So that's another great thing to interact with. And as a whole, it's a really nice vehicle. It's one to consider. It's a pretty quality machine. The price makes sense. The fact that BMWs lease out really well is also a great plus. Aside from the kind of sloppy, slushy steering, this is a pretty great machine for most families. The amount of standard features and the tech and the safety makes this kind of a no-brainer in most people's eyes. Porsche is superior to this in every way, but you're going to be paying like a 20K premium to get yourself into a Porsche. I like the fact that this comes with blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert as standard. The driving position is great. The performance is great. Look into it. I don't think you're making a bad decision by purchasing this car. I think most people are really going to like it. So with that, I'll just mention one last thing. This is a vehicle subscription car. This is not provided to me by the manufacturer. It's not a dealership car. It's a vehicle that I pay for monthly to gain access to. Okay, I mentioned this in my Audi A6 video. I forgot to mention it in my Range Rover Velar video, but this subscription program is called DriveFlow. It's a service offered in the Winston-Salem, Greensboro/Raleigh area. And I pay $1,600 a month so I can gain access to vehicles like this for review for you guys to watch. And if you want to support, I'll leave some of the Patreon information down in the description box. If you want to contribute to the channel, if you want to help out with this, you can. And if you want to check out the DriveFlow program, if you're interested in it, because I do think car subscription programs are the future of luxury car buying. If you want to check it out, I will leave the DriveFlow information in the description as well. Thanks again for watching this review. Take care and goodbye.